the edge of Eric, speaking of the absolute, everything is this, and then an idea comes, or he hears from others the sense of an arising, and he's kind of sharing how his system makes sense of that or doesn't make sense of that.
Yeah, honestly, doesn't still haven't really been able to uh, um, make sense of that. Yeah, it's just have yeah, it seems like
And how does it
very
make sense of
mysterious.
how does it interpret the sense of, oh, I'm hanging out with Carol, I'm with Carol and Sid right now on Zoom. Does it what's it's in a storage room, and temperature's cold outside. How does it make sense of that? Or is it how does it make sense of experience and time?
There was it sort of feels like a lifetime of trying to make sense of that, and now there that has just sort of fallen away and seems just not. I wouldn't say that it's not relevant, but it just is not. Um, it would be silly to say it's not real, but but it's just not. The question, there just doesn't seem to be any point in the question. Um,
Let me contextualize this just for a moment for me and Carol, because I think
yeah,
there's a richness here as for like in my system, in many systems, there's a sense of this is why I like parts. There's a sense of an aspect of us that seeks to understand, to make sense of, to contextualize experience and time, or even have a sense of time. Oh, we're here on Eastern time. It's 9:08 in the morning, and it contextualizes. It finds a sense of finding a bearing. I'm wondering, just as we do this, Carol, if your system, if you can be aware of that, which makes sense of, or like, wow, I just joined this group and this is a little different today, this IFS with Eric than what we've done before, like the parts that come up that are making sense of experience. And then we can play with that within, like in contrast to Eric's system, where it is just it's like the beingness, the volume of the beingness is turned up so loud in his system that it's what I'm getting. It's like the parts they've kind of surrendered to, or something is just kind of like, oh, we don't need to make sense or hold on. It's all the flow. It's all this beingness. First, Eric, how did I do in saying that in turn? And then we'll see what this is like for Carol.
well, light doesn't experience time. Light is light is like I wrote a poem to try to describe this. Quasars wink, pulsars shrink. No, quasars wink, uh, pulsars blink, black holes shrink. Love's universal commerce of light. And because light is, it's this transition. It is like this medium that allows this physicality to be, but in of itself, it doesn't actually experience time. The light itself in the wave form is not subject to relativity. We know this. Like this is actually, you know, so, sort of recent science. But if you actually look at it from the perspective of that light, then the light is simultaneously here and there. It's simultaneously experiencing all that. Yet it's also that substance, that thing that infuses the physical reality of the experience that we have. It's just like we freeze it by the act of observing or seeing. It provides perspective, and that perspective gives the context of time. Without the experience, without the experiencer, that's not there.
The experience. Beautiful. This is,
And
I see oh, sorry.
that's what Nisargadatta more clearly than anybody else I've ever heard was able to express in just sort of common words is it's beyond even that beingness, beyond even that I am. There's there's that indescribable, even beyond the beingness. The beingness is sort of
Beautiful, beautiful. So what I'm seeing is this opportunity for me and Carol here. And it's like we have the absolute, this that Eric's pointing to being held by us and perhaps represented in our friend Eric, that space, and there's that we can, that resonance. Because for me, the game is the simultaneity. It's that, and also then the awareness of the foreground, the parts. And as we play here today, Eric is representing this, that even before the I am, or whatever we call it, self beingness, um, this okayness, and then the parts. How are you doing with this, Carol? How it's like for you to step into this deep dive with our friend Eric and Sid and what we're playing with?
Um, well, having just moved from the dream state, so the neocortex is kind of coming back online with the concepts, and yet, as you're speaking, there's beyond that, which is actually really nice to just not be too much, and but just kind of feeling into that space beyond.
How's that? It's almost like going back into deep sleep,
Hmm.
to this emptiness, into this beyond.
Yeah, it's the in between kind of. I don't know. Yeah, there are not a lot of words right now, so just
Perfect. We'll play. We'll continue playing and seeing how it is. And my suggestion is no need to come out of it. If it can just continue in that place of that beyond, that deep sleep, and then we can notice aspects of Carol for all of us and get to hear from Josh in just a moment and welcome him in this exploration as we go together. Just to notice any of the thoughts that come up, any of the, oh, this is weird, or gosh, it's like I'm still in bed. And they're just arising in the foreground. And then here we are in this place that Eric is inviting us into and holding, where we can just resonate as this beingness, as this causeless okayness. Thank you. Hey, Josh, you stepped into quite a rich place today. What brings you to be with us today? What's going on in Josh's inner land?
Josh is are you still at Tura Avila? Always have a hard time saying it. Turavalama, am I? I can't
Yes, I
say it.
am. Sorry, the internet's not. Hopefully, you can hear me now. Yes, still in Tiruvannamalai, joining because I just find whatever groups I go on here, generally, I get the kind of, I don't know, I just get yeah, like you were saying, that it's a rich environment, or something. I like doing the GAEs and everything. I've thought it's a good time for me at 7 p.m. I uh I just tune in and check kind of what's happening. So
Well, how about this? Just so that
thought
we can
I'd
fully
come along
include
here.
so we can fully include your system in this as we go in exploring. What's the interesting edge in Josh to be at Tiruvannamalai, to be at Ramana's home in his cave and this global center for this beingness, for this awakened awareness? Is there an edge in Josh that you're aware of that's opening? It might be one of those, what, a location or layer. It might be a noticing a resistance. Is there just what's here in Josh today?
Mm, um, yeah, so it's been a lot about actually noticing the place of, I was going to say something, but it's immediately gone, so I don't know if it's actually, it's not that true anymore, maybe. But if I were to speak just about, rather than the story, just about the moment, uh, sometimes there's some desperation or in the kind of the needing for company or um, just the kind of slim chance that my the kind of sensation feeling I sometimes sometimes get in the body can be alleviated just by having some people who are in this space as well of kind of having a longing for the truth or for kind of to live from kind of the real place, uh, and I can maybe be a receiver of some of that or share in that kind of experience. So that kind of, I guess, personal, that kind of identity. Hmm, um, I mean, I'm seeing it, I'm aware of it, which is good, but that's been a consistent thing that's been driving me to do a lot of seeking. And another aspect which is coming up now is this sense that there's this kind of peak, there's this peak of what, of like spiritual status, or I don't know if it's status isn't the right word. I don't like to, but that um and so even if I don't feel like it's the right time for something, for example, being here in Tiruvannamalai, it's I'm gonna kind of put myself in the right place and hope that the growth or spiritual development can happen through grace, through however it happens. Um, yeah, so that's kind of a base, another kind of spring or something that I've been working with.
Wonderful. So how rich what you're pointing to for all of us. And just before we go further into any of this, just for all of us to notice as we hear Josh is sharing, like what responds inside of us? Are we just resting in the space that Eric speaks of, just this depth of being, or this I am, or beyond? At the same time, do we notice parts like, oh, I can relate to that. I have that same thing in my system. We notice those voices, almost like maybe they're even like sometimes it's foreground and background in my system. As as Josh speaks of sometimes a longing for company in this. Carol and I know this well. Carol and I have spoken about, we're both in kind of the dating world, relationship world. It's a different flavor of that. Or kind of an intimate partner. It's like to be deeply met. And then Josh's might be a different flavor, this just sense of being heard, met, resonating with what is loved here, not feeling a sense of aloneness in it, this connectedness in this. And then what occurs in our system, like what does occur in our systems when when there is a sense of being fully met, when we have this company, this meeting, be it an intimate partner or friends that love, as Josh says, this truth, this what's real. What do we find there? And then in this work, what seems to be a lovely aspect is it okay that that's there, even when it's really loud, even when it's, gosh, things would be better if if I had company of friends, deep friends in this. Or for Carol and I, when we're dating, life would be better if I had an intimate partner like Eric, and this is a beloved that I. Is it okay that that longing or want is here? Is it completely met? Or do we have parts that come up and that are kind of, oh, this shouldn't be here if I was really doing in the depth of beingness? Just to notice that. And I'll open this up in just a moment. And there's one other thing that Josh mentioned. He mentioned this a spiritual development. He said, so spiritual development can happen. Can we, when we hear that, can we track that in our own systems? An aspect of voice inside, like spiritual development is better than just stagnation or staying where I am. Spiritual development, deepening, getting more on the peak, going higher into the knowing the peak, being, resting, abiding as the peak is better than stagnation or thoughts or being lost. So I often call that in my system a spiritual achiever. Like, can we find a flavor of that like prefers spiritual development? Oh, no, this is what's real. This is important. This is why we're doing this group. It's like we have a part that's really clear on that. Spiritual development is better. But here's the important thing. Can we see this as a part, as a voice? Or can we be aware of that and not as it? Aware of the voice that wants more, that would like more of this to be, abide as this peak, or to really resonate deeper in what Eric's been speaking of. And can that be welcomed? Can it be loved? Can we see the innocence of that voice in us? First, if we can see it as a voice or a part, then we abide as this causeless okayness, aware of that voice. And then can it be fully welcomed and loved and adored, just as it is, the innocence of this that would like more of the peak? Before we open this up with back to Josh and Carol on this, I'm wondering, Eric, if anything, what comes up with you when you hear all of this, when you hear these beautiful sharings from Carol and Josh? Anything bubbling?
Yeah, when Carol spoke of just waking up, the it started a long time ago, but it's really settled in where the deep sleep and then the dreaming and the waking are no different. It's just not different anymore. And so there's acceptance of that. And there's a beauty and a hard to describe. When Josh was speaking of this longing, I had this sense, I literally could hear a woman singing a raga, the most just crying out in that seeking. And what came to me was the image of Prince Siddhartha's mother giving birth to the child who would become the Buddha. And that singing of the pain and the joy. and the seeking and the finding all just merging into one. And there's this very still bliss that arises, but I can't even really say from where. It just kind of filters.
As we hear Eric speak of this very still bliss, how do we know that? How do we know that right now? This very still bliss. What's most like that in our systems? And if we're not really sure what he's pointing to, or if we'd like some help, we have the gift of Eric being here, almost like a tuning fork. You can let your system just kind of resonate with the very still bliss that's here. As we receive the gifts from each of us, and that seems perhaps that's part of Eric's gift to us right now. And as you're noticing what's most like very still bliss for you, I like to do my 30-second housekeeping that I do each time. And this is just, especially with Joshua being new with us, this is that I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a mediator. And this isn't the psychotherapy of IFS. They're friends and colleagues exploring. Everybody's good. Being responsible for their own journeys today. If I could get a thumbs up, please, from you. And then secondly, notice I have the recording on. Sometimes I share this with others who can't make this, especially this depth that we're exploring. However, only my image, only my square is ever shared. However, the audio that you share could be included. And if there's any discomfort at all, just let me know and I make you a co-host and you just click pause when you speak. Or if there's anything that you said that you'd rather not be shared, just let me know at the end and I go delete, delete, delete on that. If everybody's good that this might be shared, if I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Awesome. So as we're here together, and maybe sense of this being, this is self, this essence, not just being limited to our square. Maybe there's a sense of the shared beingness or the truth of what this beingness is, and it's not personal and limited to here. What's it like being here? What's going on for you? As for Josh, as you share, and Carol, as you share, and as we listen to Josh and Carol, what's here?
Oh, speak. There's kind of this feel like there's a soup with different flavors that stand out or arise here and there. And so one flavor is a resistance, and the resistances are not separate from the soup or the feeling of bliss even. But a part arose, Sid, when you said that we discussed dating and finding someone to kind of be met in a deepening, and I'm just, I'm not in that world. I just wanted to clarify that it's like that, um, and there's sort of a life stage and experience that it just sort of I mean, I'm probably so much older than all of you, and anyway, so I just wanted to clarify, not there's not a need to be met, and the be met, as Josh is referring to, um, is more in these spaces or wherever that occurs. There's just not a seeking any of that by through dating. I'll put it that way.
Well, how
But
about that exquisite discernment there, Carol? I mean, that's lovely. Because in my system, there's both. I mean, I have a date this afternoon, and it's both the intimacy of meeting partner, beloved, and this the subtlety that Josh was describing of meeting and this
yeah, both.
the people of it. And so I love the clarity of the discernment in your system. Like it's not so clear here all the time like that. Thank you. Please continue.
Yeah. So just but noting that, just wanted to it's of course could be, but just saying the different flavors arise um and that it's sort of more like that there isn't this separation and being in the states, whatever the state is, the deep sleep or the waking state or whatever state, there are but there are happenings in the system, electrical firings or whatever that occur in different states, it seems. So, yeah, anyway, there's also just right now, there's this pervasive stillness that's here.
So for all of us, as we hear Carol speak of the soup, there's this soup of being, and then there's resistance. There's resistance that arises in her. However you make sense of that, the resistance could be clouds, and in my work, I often like label them as parts just to have it be simpler to see. When you hear her speak of that, is the resistance a problem that's arising in her? Is it a problem that there's resistance? Or is it just welcome, just as the beingness is welcome, the love is welcomed? Notice that. Just, and then Carol speaks of the resistance isn't separate from the soup. It's of the soup. And I wonder about that. It's so lovely. And like, when does resistance, we could even say that everything arises. Sometimes the Buddhists say it's just resistance that arises. When does it become separate from the soup in your system? When does it really separate from the soup? Or is it always of the soup? Anything else, Carol? We see what's happening in Josh.
Yeah, that it's never separate from the soup. There's just maybe a stirring of the flavor that pops up here and there. And the resistance is not a problem. Yeah.
Lovely.
Um, so for this kind of apparent uh, experience, what uh, is or what seems to be kind of happening or going on? There's kind of this, just speaking immediately from my experience. Uh, I the narrating, the mind narrating everything that this body is kind of expressing. You know, there's an immediate um, like understanding or seeing that when it's coming from a place of kind of inner knowing or resonance or inner the kind of shared presence, or if it kind of feels, um, just kind of slightly. But it's interesting because I noticed that that's all kind of a belief, mate. Like it's a belief in the thoughts appearing and that kind of narrating, and then it's kind of there's kind of this registering now. I'm just kind of seeing now, oh wow, that's kind of been a that process. That doesn't have to be given. I don't have to validate that because uh, many because you don't have to take thought treat thought as kind of the anything other than um, kind of an appearance on the screen, maybe. Uh, yeah, so I guess just kind of, yeah,
Mhm. And I'm wondering what that's
playing with
like,
that.
Josh, because I wonder what that's like, and I'd love to hear where Eric goes with this, because I could, like, when you say, like, there's just the thoughts, the narration, the mind, and then it doesn't have to be believed, doesn't have to be validated. I'm wondering in your system, I'm wondering in our systems if it's like a volume knob or a sense of there's a sense of choice somewhere or an awareness to believe, to make them concrete, or just to be able to see the transparency, or like the if it's like the transparency of the thoughts. And I'm curious before we go back to you with this, I'd love to hear how maybe how Eric contextualizes all this because he's he's our he's kind of in a way perhaps playing the rock for us today of this infinite isness. Um, what do you do with what the beauty of what Josh is saying, the sense of almost a sense of choice, but probably without a chooser? Where do you go with that?
Sorry, was that to me?
Oh, I was to see if anything came of what Eric can do. If we got the where
Oh,
Eric's system goes with, and then come back to you, Josh, as far as really looking at it, because it's you're just getting to the very essence, such an essence of this game.
Um, this is almost like speaking from a place of memory to say something like it's such a blessing that the thoughts just don't cause a problem. Um, there's two things that seem to just always make this primariness. So one is seeing. So there's no difference between the seeing and the seen. There isn't like an experiencer of it. There's just the seeing and seen and seer, but it's still a way of being, in this physical bodied environment and interacting with other people. But in the midst of doing that, just simply seeing the thoughts just melt. It's like the seeing just takes the primary. It occupies enough of the system that the thoughts can just relax. And then the other aspect is the breath. And the breath has a burning quality. It's like a birthing and a dying continually. And it actually burns. There's a quality to it. It's joy and and suffering. It's like pain and bliss at the same time. Just the breath, just breathing. And that's the experience of existing. Then the thoughts come when they're needed, when they're useful, like, do I have pumpkin pie or chocolate cake? Then a choice can be made. And then discussion will happen with other people, which one was better. And there can be lively discussion about the merits of pumpkin pie or chocolate cake. An interesting thing happened, which is new to me. This might have been somewhat new experience. A few days ago, I generally don't really drink alcohol anymore, but occasionally I do it socially. And there was a very large Christmas Eve, so this is like 4 days ago now, 3 nights ago. And in the excitement of staying up till 2 a.m. because I'm on night shift, so I'm not getting tired, and I probably drank 2/3 of a bottle of Scotch whiskey, and there was no effect. Nothing happened. I didn't get drunk. I didn't get hungover. And it was peculiar. It was like, oh, the system has changed. There's the non-differenceness has settled in so strongly that even doing something like kind of silly like that just doesn't even really have much effect. I mean, there was very, very minor effect, but virtually none. I mean, but previously it would have taken me a week to recover. I mean, I would have been so horrendously alcohol poisoned.
Let me check with all of us as we hear Eric's experience of this, because as we together are playing with this absolute, this Carol and I were, before you arrived, Josh, we were talking about like the deep sleep that she was just coming out of. This beingness, this pure awareness, this screen that's always here. Or Josh being at Ramana's mountain, Ramana, this awakened awareness, this that's unaffected even by the 2/3 of a bottle of scotch. This that's unaffected by experience. It's imperturbable. That's ever present. There's that. And then did you see Eric smile when he talked about it? Then there's discussion. And he just smiled when he said, then there's discussion, or the choice between the pies. And I love that term in India where they said the dance of Leela, just the play of it all. Because then as we hear Josh speak of, then the thoughts come. The thoughts come. It's like it can believe them, it can validate them or not. And then this occurs and this occurs. And can it all be like the foreground, the discussion, the choice of the pies? Even this group that we're doing right now, as we get to four of us get to play together, all in play, where Carol speaks as well about the enjoyment of connecting with friends in the depth of this. Is it really giving us something? What Josh spoke of, this sense of, and then sometimes there's a longing for community, for friendship, to be met, to have colleagues, friends, sangha in this. Are we really gaining anything? Is anything really enhanced by it? Or this background, this ever-present beingness is already fulfillment? And then we're just playing as the longing arises, or this idea of remaining on the peak, this in me, the spiritual achiever that wants more clarity, more resting as this. Is there really ever a more on this other level? So where do you go with this, Josh? What comes up for you as you hear Eric's beautiful sharing in your own?
Um, yeah, thank you. Um, Sid, thank you, Eric, as well, both for sharing just then. Yeah, I mean, kind of as you were speaking, both, I was kind of just being aware of the way that the kind of recognition of when thoughts are appearing, but also the experience of, oh, there's a kind of energy here that um displaces the thought in a way, not in a, or kind of adjusts, shifts the thought in a way that's like, oh, that's kind of, and then it's kind of new, and then there's this elated feeling from this personal self that feels like it's getting somewhere by, um oh no, I don't know, getting somewhere, but it's like, wow, this thought has been, it's gone now. That's great. Uh, and then what you said, actually, what I wanted to point, look at, I think you said something just then, Sid, um, the kind of the absoluteness of it all, or anyway, I've lost that train of thought, but um, yeah, I guess kind of I don't know, just a willingness to be open, or to kind of however the present kind of experience for any of us is being shared.
What about that, Josh? Just for always what Josh just said, this willingness to be open for this present experience is being shared. This openness, because this makes me think of where we went with Carol, and I'm curious how Carol's system's going with all of this as well. We'll shift there in a moment. As Carol was describing, everything that was arising was of the soup. Even the resistance was of the soup, not separate from this, of the soup. And Josh, when you describe an openness to what's here, to what's arising, like what would it be like inside if there was truly just an openness to what's arising, the welcoming of it? And that's what becomes interesting for me. And that's what kind of seems to highlight the edge of Sid's opening, or Sid, when it shifts from, is what I asked Carol earlier, the sense of, can we track when a resistance doesn't feel like it's part of this, where it kind of like separates and it becomes maybe a problem or something other than this. And in for Josh's system, when it with this openness, it reaches a capacity, like, no, but this is a problem. Because that's how the edge, that's the play of the edge in my system, when it leaves just the dance of it all, the joy of it all, and it becomes, but wait a minute, my body feels sick. This is something I got to do something about. This is outside of the openness, and then it becomes a little bit of drama, a little bit of resistance to it that becomes real, or this teacher Locke Kelly calls it, like, when it becomes a problem to be solved. Like, what's it like when there's no problem to be solved, when everything's of the soup, when everything's of the openness, but then there's a little edge when it does become a problem. What's bubbling? Anybody got anything bubbling?
Uh, there's, yeah, the soup is bubbling. The soup is bubbling. Um, yeah, a number of things. One is when I said a while ago there's this chronological age that carries uh wisdom, the chronological wisdom. this that just go back to the dating thing for a minute because there's um that when say relating to someone with the concept of dating and all that then the physicality becomes important.
Carol, you went muted. We can't hear you now.
Oh, sorry. So with
We just we just heard when the physicality becomes important.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that yeah, so that world the longing for that world shifts. Anyways, so there's that. I but I did that the phrase that chronological wisdom and what goes into the soup, like when Eric you mentioned um Buddha's birth, Siddhartha's birth, and that I don't know if you any of you have been to Lumbini, the birthplace. It's not it's have you been there, Eric? To Lumbini?
Yeah, I've been to Lumbini. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. So you stood at the where that the birth, where the birth was. So I was just
yeah.
kind of feeling into that, and lots happened there. But that's all this like it's all in this soup, right? All these experiences, and just feeling into the birth. And then if you went out to Kalapavats, who can't remember the exact name, but the castle where he lived, and um, before he went out into the world, and all those places and the energy that they carry. So just the cure, like you said, your question is so important. It's like I can't remember the exact question, but what does any of it like there are all these life experiences of the system of the form. They happen. Do they matter? I, I mean, they happen. So now my mind is sort of wanting is just going to gosh, there's so many life experience over, decades and decades. And now here is this. There's just this now. And the unfolding continues and and so there's just a curiosity of human experience and what matters, is say as we guide even younger generation, or they come in different stages of life. So anyway, there's just sort of this open curiosity about all of that, but I don't want to get too caught up in the concepts of it. But that just arose, and it's kind of fun to explore, and yeah, and just be here together exploring this. And I have an uh something scheduled on the hour, although I may forego it for being here because this is
Mhm.
it's nice to be here.
I love your curiosity of human experience. I think Eric and I were speaking of that even before you guys arrived today. Way. And this is where I think the subtlety of these awakening paths kind of divide and go different ways with Carol's question. The curiosity of human experience, like Carol, there's all these experiences Carol has had in her lifetime, all these experiences each of us have, we're having right now, continue to have as experiences. Because and then I think it becomes fascinating the way different paths go with that. Like some of us, Eric and I were talking about the radical non-dualist who might say, nothing's happening, nothing's ever happened. There's only this. There's only this place that Josh keeps pointing to when we're not kind of validating the thoughts or experience. There's just this. And then at the same time, there is all of this that has occurred. There is all this experience, and there's this seeing, this feeling, this hearing, this senses, experience of time. it can be lovely to even play with that. I mean, that's one of the things that Jeffrey's little map of locations and layers can be kind of fun with, like all these different ways of experiencing time, experiencing life, making sense of. Maybe that's just part of the fun. This what Eric's the sense of, and then we discuss all this, and then I decide between the pie. It's almost like we can play with these different ways of how much, for Josh, how loud is the volume? If we're going to give a little to the thoughts to the foreground, or are we just going to rest in this bliss of being that Eric's pointing us to? Do we just want to just rest as that and like a little interest in what's happening in time in the foreground? Where do you guys go with this that Carol's opening up for us?
Well, I've been wanting to reach out to Carol actually, and so I'm glad that we've had several um, times to meet face to face, um, because I would really like to um, access your experience with that in navigating the relationship that I'm in, which has a bunch of uncertainty. Although there's not sort of, but it's navigating that. It's a 8-year relationship, and I was very much on this path when we met, but there's been sort of a slight divergence in some ways. Um, I'm figuring out how I heard the words listening, openness, and transparency. And learning how to do that with somebody wherever they're at, and to not wish for them to change in any way. And that the experience that they're having is just as blessed.
And does it, Eric, I'm wondering because I love that it's because we all have our versions where it's very real, right? It's very real. There's something very real for your this woman you're in love with that who's been your partner for 8 years, and then we all have aspects of, like for me, my relation with my 90-year-old father who's getting towards the end of his life right now, and we all have these kind of dear experiences in time with our kids, with or politics about the world and concern. And then there's this that we're speaking of. And I'm wondering what it's like for you. It's like for me, it's like sometimes it's like a little knob, and it's like Rupert Spira speaks of it as transparency of content, what's arising, like we can see through it sometimes, and it's just we turn the knob all the way up to this beingness and the or just what Josh was saying, the thoughts they're not validated, not believed, almost experience is seen through with the transparency. And then, but the experience that's very dear to us, this relationship that you're having, it's like I'm wondering if it's like that or what's the modulation or what's the experience of the spectrum?
I'll share a story. While here at McMurdo Station, I chose to be open about meditating. So I initiated 2 1-hour silent meditations at the chapel, one on Sunday mornings and one on Wednesday afternoons. So the one before the chapel service was in the morning. So the first time I did it, it seemed rude to get up as people were coming in to the service. And so I stayed. And then after that, I actually felt like I could keep staying, but sometimes it was challenging. But it's been a real blessing because I learned how to be there in presence, in stillness, with no belief, but no judgment, and to be perfectly okay with the message that was being said and how it was being said, and the people there listening to it, and whatever experience they're having. So on the Christmas service, four of us were asked to do a speaking part. And I said, okay, but there was some slight resistance because I didn't read the part ahead of time. And I was given the part of the shepherd. The chaplain who was here wanted to have this little sort of like Christmas play. And so I was given the part of the shepherd. And what a blessing it turned out to be, because the shepherds were the observer of that birth of the Christ, the first to come in physical reality to recognize and see that. And so that was the speaking part that I got to speak and spontaneously sing with no rehearsal, "Oh, come, let us adore him." And this is the incredible grace and richness of not thinking, not believing, not judging, just being present and being present with whatever is there and whoever is there.
This that you're pointing to, the stillness, this presence, no belief, no judgment, obscures it. That we've all been kind of, I'm sorry, Eric.
It doesn't necessarily obscure it, but it flavors it.
Mm,
It puts it through a perspective. But when no perspective is seen, when there's no difference, when there's no difference between the seeing, the seer, and the seen, when it is all just one, and it's real, it's not believed, it's not a belief that when it's
yes.
when this thing that can't even be experienced is somehow still felt.
So then, first, what's this like for us as we hear what Eric's describing as he was the wise man? He played the part of the shepherd, the celebrating, and as he describes this, like, oh, like what's your version of that? Your knowing of that? And then I'm curious to go back to what Carol was saying just again about the curiosity of human experience. Like this is a flavor with where Eric is, where there's just this come let us adore him and just seeing the light, the beauty of what is. And then there's these experiences in time that we all have that Eric speaks of with his partner. And I wonder two sides of this for all of us and see what's going on with Josh. But there's Eric spoke of sometimes the thought that our partner should be different or something would be better if something was a little different. And maybe that comes. But I'm also wondering the other side of it, like playing with that knob when everything just kind of goes where the screen goes white, everything goes to bliss. The characters on the screen, everything's seen through the transparency of beingness. That then there's the knob that also brings us more into time, more into relationship, more into experience. And that sometimes in my life, like people are wanting that's kind of a solid experience in time. And I'm wondering if we play with that knob as well as far as this curiosity of human experience, because this is where these paths go very different ways in the the role of human experience in time. Once we do realize this peak that Josh is speaking of, once our system knows that, then what? I was Eric and I were talking a speaker on at POK, Annalisa Edelberg will speak of, then it can go to simultaneous awareness, like the full both the foreground, the experience in time and the timelessness, awareness of both. Like and that's when it becomes really subtle and interesting for me, is like where we go. And that's where the paths seem to go very different ways. Where you go with this, Josh, because you're just at the center of it all at Tirunamala. I'm the same way. I can't pronounce it either. Like Eric, where do you go with this?
Yeah, I mean, um, yeah, I guess you could say that kind of richness again because um, it's so dense here, not energetically, but I mean, just in terms of the kind of um, availability of uh, spiritual teachings, kind of in the Advaita classic non-dual sense, but also many there are uh, a number of different kind of ways it's expressed here. So um, yeah, I guess in some ways that's what pulled me here and kind of has made me stick to being here, kind of, because of that. Yeah, I mean,
Josh,
I originally came.
I wanted to ask where you're
Yeah,
from, where your accent is from, and just a little bit of how you came to be there.
sure. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, originally, and that's where I was born. Uh, my pa, I don't ever call him that. I just my dad. But he was actually born in India here in uh, in Mysore. To Anglo-Indian parents, which is like a ethno sub kind of group. Um, and my mother was born in Melbourne to European immigrants from Germany and Hungary. So yeah, I guess we end up in Melbourne. I was born there and stayed there until I was uh, finished university, and then was traveling for a few years. Went back, now traveling again. So I wouldn't say I'm traveling now. I'm just staying in Tiru, but um, yeah.
Then, Josh, where do you
Is
go?
that kind of what you were looking for?
Sorry.
No, no, it's okay. You
How do you
go.
do, Eric?
Yeah, great. And why Turu Avalomanai, besides Ramana Maharishi, I'm assuming was the goal there.
Yeah, it's so a lot of teachers, especially in not all the time, but there aren't so many so far this year, but there are a few who come to visit, and there are quite a few who live here as well. But actually, I came and stayed more. There's this one teacher who I don't really go to see regularly. Well, there are a couple of teachers, but it's just when I found a teacher in Melbourne, she taught like Buddhist like Zen meditation, and I had a Zoom with her the first time, and in my mind I was like, I wish I could just talk to her every day or see her every day because the benefit or the I knew there was some power in just communicating or interacting with someone who was so grounded, so stable, so clear that the clarity just kind of pierced through. Um, and so I remember wishing at the time, like, oh, I wish I could, and it would be free. And so there's a teacher here, and she does every day. She does satsangs. But interestingly, what's come in with that is what's come up. This is past, so maybe tomorrow I start going every day, and it's ends up, working out well. But I kind of, what I get from this teacher with consistency, it's not it's not I haven't completely acclimatized to the scene. There's people in flowing white gowns and all this spiritual kind of um uh I want to say charcuterie, but no, I mean, like, like just all of the fanfare, or the not fanfare, just kind of the what goes with kind of uh it's all white and it's very pristine, and lots of people who, I mean, many people are just wearing ordinary clothes, but there are people who, only wear kind of orange and white sari clothes, and so that's taken some adjusting to, and the kind of part of me that really feel doesn't doesn't the ego. It's really just ego that kind of is unwilling to kind of follow that gut feeling and bow and be like very surrendered in that way. Though there have been times when I have felt like that. So it's interesting. I got my perfect scenario, but at the same time, there's all these elements that have not kind of um yeah. So anyway, it's interesting. I've still managed to find and meet a lot of people, good people, and
Oh, how about this, Josh? First, like what arises for us as we hear Josh describe like being at this kind of center of satsang, getting to be with non-dual teacher in person, perhaps every day. What arises? And then he speaks of the flavors of it, the colors, the outfits. Does it, do we hear like a spiritual achiever part, a sense of a part that's like, oh God, that'd be great. I'd like to be there with him. Just rest there and dive in deeper. A part that sees that oh, there is a peak. There's some place to go, something to get. Because how does that play in us? That there's something more, that there's something more. And is that just kind of welcome to the innocence of it, just like Eric was playing with it? And then we discuss and we decide what pie to eat. Oh, what am I going to wear that orange today, or wear the white, or I'm just going to go? And is there something there? Is it all in the play? And then can we also notice the part that believes, takes it seriously? Like there's a thought that's believed that there is something more. And can that just the innocence of that and be welcomed and included? Like, yeah, that's what's helped me get here where I am today. And then just the flip side of it, back to where Carol was pointing us, this curiosity about human experience. Like just on the other, it's almost like the other side of this. It's like once this is kind of known, and there maybe there's a like whatever degree of abidance, like or or just along the way, what's the relationship between this that we're speaking of, the stillness, this causeless okayness, and the human experience? Carol's talking about all this chronological time and all that's occurred. And what weight do we give it in our system? Like, it's like, is there a ratio, an ideal ratio in our system of this beingness to time, the timelessness to time? How do we really? Carol, anything coming up for you with all of this?
There's let's see. Actually, Main thing that's coming up is it's so familiar to go with concepts and what arises through all of that, just as any of us are speaking. And that as Josh was talking, though, what actually came up for me was Eric's description of breath. That was really profound for me as a lifelong yoga practitioner, um, and just breath work and all that. But just that I haven't experienced that burning, not conceptualized it as a burning or felt it as a burning, but certainly as the rising and falling uh, of um, of birth and death, say, or that there's no separation of that even. So that and listening and the listening, say listening to Josh or listening to the sound that's coming out of here right now, any of it, that listening and with the breath. So that's what's alive right now. It's just this kind of awareness of the breath with all of that. That is with us, from the moment of this human birth until it's not, and then all the in-betweenness. And then yeah, with the robes and all that. So it's like, they're sort of like life stages of experiencing the teachers and the who has ego and who doesn't. Like right now, I love I really enjoy Gareth and Eva because they feel they're young and they feel so egoless, and I enjoy that, and just whatever comes. But there's still this sort of, does any of it matter? It's what is and what happens, and um, so you could go off into some philosophical thing about that, but there's no need for that. But anyway, so I'm just kind of being with the breath part right now.
Gotcha. Curious where Eric goes, but I just got one thing on this. Like it's like, does any of it matter? That goes to the very core of it. It's almost like not a concept. It's as if it could go to the very core of this. It's like what is this experience? Can it be both? Can it be like, oh, it's all just the sky, it's all beingness, it's all love, it's all bliss, but also it's just there's an immanence where the experience, it can't matter more. It's just it's beauty, it's love, and it's like we're both even more immanent in this human experience while we're seeing perhaps the transparency of it, like playing with all of that. It's just it's so, I think it's so rich in different paths of different ways with it. And hmm, where you go with all this, Eric? What's coming up? So much.
Well, Ramana is very dear, and I'll never formally a student. A lot of time was spent, with Ramana and with kind of with his inquiry, but also sort of with him. It's almost like there's this when it first happened, which sounds funny to say, but I was so young that I didn't have any context and I didn't have any system to really put it through. And so there was, as you say, Josh, kind of a bit of a rejection of all of the pomp and attainments and reification. And I really had a hard time with the idea of God, because when you're being touched by this stillness that is so absolute, even this idea of sort of a God entity that seems to be, even though that's not really the Vedanta teaching, but it is usually squished in. And that's even the beingness, which is the curious thing. When even the beingness is so still that there's no beingness even. So when Carol spoke of age and chronology, that was perhaps 50 years ago or so in this human life. And it's morphed through that 50 years of experience, experiencing, trying to come to terms, try to explain, try to put into some way of understanding, which has really just come back to where it was originally. This no need to categorize or explain. Yet it can be
We all.
felt.
Oh, sorry.
That's the great mystery. But it still inserts into experience, not separate from.
You just check in with everyone as Eric's sharing, as we have 8 minutes left today. What's it like in your experience? And then I want to cut Eric off and see what else is there for Eric has with us. But I just wanted to do a reality check. What's it like being you right now? With this bliss of being, the stillness, this presence. Okay, this is that we've all been pointing to and celebrating. Soup. What's the feel of that? How do you know it? How is it known? Is it equanimity? Is it presence? Is it love? Is it peace? Limitless. How is it known? This being, this that brings Josh to the mountain, this that his teacher is speaking of every day, this that Eric's pointing to, this that Carol's pointing to. How's it known here? What's it known as? Eric even speaks of below, beneath being, before being. The flavor of it. Is it aliveness? Is it vibration? Is it stillness? And what's the foreground? What's in the soup? What arises? What are the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that arise? The resistance, the wants, the longings, graspings. And are they all of the soup right now? Or are there some that are just kind of loud, that are stepping away, and like wow, that are loud? The last question, is everything welcomed here? Is everything okay? Everything that's here okay and welcomed in this play, in this expression of Josh and Sid and Carol and Eric? Is it all this beautiful expression? And as we notice, as we bring in the three of us who are with you, all of our expressions, are we all of the soup? Is it all included? Is it all this beautiful play? Eric, did you have some more words that you wanted to share? Then we'll kind of open up for Carol and Josh as we move towards closure together. I love where you were taking us.
No, there aren't really any more words, but one of the really beautiful things about it is that just being with anybody, wherever they're at, there's just this incredible, just indescribableness of it. And the people just shine.
Being with everybody, with anybody, wherever they're at. It's this incredible indescribableness of it. And the people just shine. What's it like being seen that way by our friend Eric? What's it like being seen that way? We just shine. Incredible indescribableness of what we are, his experience of us. And can we do that in return? Can we see each other that way? Incredible indescribableness. Just shine. Just shine. We open it up. I do want to put a little asterisk. As you were sharing, Carol, I think I got a little subjective in describing the sense of mattering, the sense of celebrating experience. And that was just my subjectiveness that was coming in. What do you have, Carol and Josh, to kind of close this celebration today? What's here for you?
I'll just add there's kind of an amusement of um, being, it felt really good to be asked, how are you? What's your self experiencing? What's that like? And it was sort of like, oh, what's my separate self? What's my separate self? Oh, are you interested in this separate self? Anyway, so it was just this amusement about that. And then Eric, there's that what you're pointing to, this in sort of ordinary life, humans. I don't feel like that we're ordinary humans, maybe, but that yeah, um, there was resistance just really recently. It shifted resistance to being with people who weren't awake, say, or they're not wearing they're they're wearing the robes, or they're not wearing the robes or whatever. And that has fallen away so much. There is just that recognition, or it's not anything. It's just enjoyment of all these expressions, and participating there. That again with Eva and Eric, I mean Eva and Gareth, their their young wisdom that shines through, and yet they're so fully engaged, like in the technology and what they offer. They're fully engaged also, and I love that. So it's wonderful to, yes, have all of that, both and yeah, for this landing. And thank you so much, Sid, for the guidance you offer. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carol. Josh, you are our finale today. What do you
Okay.
bring it all together for us?
Um, Gosh, okay. Well, yeah, I can echo what Carol said. Just thanking you, Sid, for your guidance on this. I mean, I feel like every time I'm asked to speak in this context, I completely forget everything that's just been said. So I don't know if I can bring it together, but I can offer my own, or kind of what's appearing for me here, and just kind of express that. Yeah, I mean, the expressions of life that are so uh, uh, the multiplicity and diversity of life is kind of even in, displayed right here, even in the four kind of squares you can see in each of us, it's like, wow, there's different backgrounds in each of them, different people, different faces, there's all this kind of um, color and light and yeah, I just kind of think it's a beautiful uh, example or demonstration of what this whole thing's about, right? It's about just recognizing that we're all kind of so um, diverse and yet kind of full of the same purity that, like you were saying before, the kind of blank, transparent screen that of presence, I guess, is all encompassing. Um, I can't find anything that is outside of consciousness or outside of space. I could say my consciousness, but I can't say it's like belongs to any individual, anyone either. So, yeah, I hope that kind of did justice to
Beautiful.
the everyone here. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Josh. Leslie. Eric, if you have just 5 minutes, I had a quick logistic question for you. And I just want to say this for me was being with three spiritual teachers today. And I just want to thank you so much. I just loved what we did. It was such a gift. And come back again, Josh, if it ever works when you're in India. Come back on a Thursday. It's such a treat having you here. Carol, lovely, lovely, lovely. Eric, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Wishing
Thank
you
you
well
all.
Thank you,
on the
everyone.
date later, said.
Wow. Eric, it's really, I have got a question for you, but like gratitude that you're here, because like when I use that word, the rock that we got to play, it's like we got Nisargadatta here in our group holding that space, and then we all get to play, and it just contextualize. It's a real gift to for me and kind of facilitating the group and having the perspective of like, wow, it's just incredible, indescribable. All these people are just this, they're just shining, and it's like to have you hear with that depth of what is being seen, where your system is, it is such a beautiful invitation for us all get to know that deeper in our own systems, while from there we also get to celebrate and welcome all these humanness, all these expressions, everything that arises, I get to play. And I just it's such a gift, your contribution. I just want to thank you. I was so excited when I saw you show up today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for providing this space. And, it's the amazing thing is, this community and this group of people, it's okay to do that. Although I don't always open up quite the same way with all the different POK groups, because some of them they're much more um, sort of ideationist, sort of, discussing the ideas of all of this. Um, that's the amazing thing when somebody like Ramana or Nisargadatta or Paramahansa Yogananda or Krishna or Christ or Buddha and many, many others, they're all conduits. They're not separate. There isn't just a Christ way or just a Buddha way. They're not they're not even differentiated anymore. They only came and did that human thing, They did this thing that we're doing now, which is the miracle. They came, they had this human experience. But it is like the bliss. It's not the thing, but it's
Mm.
like it's not really the thing, but it's like a carrier beam of it draws one close to that oneness that's inseparable.
I'm, I'm wondering if there's any feedback you have or suggestions and kind of the role I was aspire to play and kind of being in the background, but kind of to celebrate and throw out inquiries for us all and celebrate what we're all sharing. If there's anything you saw where I could be more effective in the depths in which we're exploring together.
Really, honestly, no. It's so you're so skilled. There's such you really have a gift. You're bringing this gift of bringing these people together from wherever, whatever experience they're having, and and creating the space that we can all share it. And I'm kind of in awe of that you're able to do that. It's not part of this system. It's not part of the habit of this human system. Um, and so there's just a real recognition of this incredible skillfulness
Thank you.
that you bring to it, and openness, like
Yes.
you're being you're providing the skillfulness, but you're providing the openness to allow it to just happen.
Um, the aspiration is it really is just to be the student in this openness. And I wanted to ask if you ever see like a contraction or resistance, because you might be able to pick it. If you ever see anything like that, just to let me know, because as it continues to learn, or something says something, and someone says something, and I'm not able to kind of appreciate it and celebrate it, or there seems to be like, oh, Sid's sharing his perspective. Um, that's what I
Well, I mean, the
yeah.
only thing that I would add is that it would be nice to hear your perspective a little bit more, actually,
Mm,
um, because sometimes you're doing that role and drawing us all together and sharing what's going on, and then to maybe just drop that for a sec and just, or maybe we could, or I could ask, or somebody else could ask you a question of how is this for you in this moment?
thank you. I'd love that. And that would be if it sometimes it's helpful to kind of take the hat off and just, okay, this is my experience. And yes, if you think of that anytime, please do. I enjoy that as well. And it also seems also fair because we're inviting such vulnerability and sharing. And the idea is I would actually like to be the most, represent the most vulnerable and openness to, and representing the safe space and not just kind of have any kind of distance as a facilitator. And so I try to do, but it's hard because sometimes it feels like I'm indulging Sid. And so it's helpful. Yeah, if that comes up, I'd love that. I try to do
Hmm.
that when I remember.
Yeah, and it's funny as far as that resistance. I'm not sure how to speak to that because I do get these heart squeeze sensations still. It's felt in the body, but I don't even know what it's related to sometimes. But it's
Mm,
still, there's this humanness, like this sort of like ow-ness of something that comes up, but it's
yes.
partly something that I had actually blocked for most of my life because as a young person, there was too much empathic. I could feel the people around so strongly that there was a very distinct blocking off of that because it was too overwhelming, too powerful.
Mm,
And so um, it's like there's just this little twinge of habit of falling back into that pattern, and it's felt as this slight ow feeling, but then it just subsides. It just,
mm. What a treat, Eric. Thanks for hanging out today. Really, really